There are a ton of unique and interesting weapons in Horizon Zero Dawn that can actually be some of the most powerful weapons in the entire game. And if you're looking to get the most out of your playthrough, or maybe you're a New Game Plus and looking for some ways to switch things up, these are definitely ones that I'd recommend picking up as soon as possible. So let's talk about the best unique weapons in Horizon Zero Dawn, where to get them, and the best way to coil them in order to maximize their effectiveness. Kicking it off with the Rattler. The Rattler is a short-range weapon that has the ability to fire regular and elemental bolts at a rapid rate. Personally, I think the Rattler is one of the more slept-on weapon types in the game because in the right situation and with the right weapon mods, it's capable of dealing an absolutely massive amount of damage. If you've played Horizon Forbidden West, think of the Rattler as a precursor to the Bolt Blaster, but I actually like it a bit better since you don't have to charge up the Rattler before you fire it, and it's quicker to reload. And when paired with Frost, which can essentially double the amount of impact damage you deal, there's not a machine from Mother's Watch to Meridian that stands a chance. The Rattler is also incredibly resource efficient, which I can't necessarily say about some of the other weapons on this list. It only costs shards and bridgewood to craft the bolts, which is a good thing, especially if you're early in the game or strapped for resources. Now the downside to the Rattler is that it's no good at distance, like pretty much unusable, so if you're running more of a stealth build or you like to sit back and take out machines from a distance, it's probably not for you. But the trade-off here is that you don't have to be so accurate to use it. Because of the rapid rate of fire and the spread of the bolts, you can pretty much aim anywhere near the machine, and if you're close enough, you'll be able to take them out quickly. And another good thing about the Rattler is that you don't really have to go that far out of your way to get it. The green Uncommon Rattler can be picked up from merchants as early as the Nora Hunting Grounds. The blue Carja Rattler and the purple Shadow Rattler, which include additional coil slots as well as shock and frost bolts, can both be picked up once you get to Meridian. And of course, like other weapon types, if you're in New Game Plus, there's an Adept Rattler which you can purchase that has the same stats as the Shadow, but includes a 4th modification slot, which you can use to make it even more powerful. Now for coils, if you're going to be using regular bolts for damage and not the elemental ones, which is mostly how I use it, you can stick with mostly damage coils. This is going to ensure that you're getting the highest amount of damage output possible, especially when pairing it with a frost weapon. But if you do have some coils that add in some additional handling, those are also a really good option because handling coils increases your rate of fire and your reload speed, making this already pretty fast weapon even faster. Next on the list is the improved Icerail. This is the Banuk weapon that you can pick up in the Frozen Wilds, which is an absolute beast and one of the most fun weapons to play around with. Seriously, if you're not already using the Icerail, this is one you definitely need to check out. There are 2 versions of this weapon, the improved Icerail and in New Game Plus the Adept Icerail. The only difference between them being the additional coil slot you get on the Adept version. And what makes this weapon so awesome is the ice cannon, which is so powerful it can take out many machines in just a couple of hits. The Icerail also has incredible range on it. It can basically act like an icy sniper rifle, hitting targets and taking out machines at a distance. Now the downside is that the ice cannon does need to charge up in order to use it. You have to hold down the trigger until the crosshairs are all the way locked in, and then let go to fire off the shot. This long charge up time can make it pretty hard to use if you're going up against machines that are really quick, or if you're not in stealth and on the run. Now you can offset this slightly by using handling mods, which will decrease the amount of time it takes to charge up the shot. But again, for the most part, when I'm coiling the Icerail, I stick to mostly damage mods since I'm mainly just using it to deal damage. And if I have a damage coil that has handling or frost as a secondary benefit, I'll use that as well. Now another negative with the Icerail is that it absolutely drinks chill water. This is not a resource-friendly weapon by any means, which might make it impractical to have in your weapon wheel at all times. But if you do happen to have a stockpile of chill water just lying around, this is one you'll definitely want to play around with. Now in order to pick up the improved or Adept Icerail, you first need to pick up the regular Banuk Icerail. You can get this by completing the side quest for the Werrick. Small disclaimer, this quest is one that's designed for the endgame and it's no joke. The end has you fighting 3 frost calls all at the same time. But once you do complete it, you'll be rewarded with the Banuk Icerail. From there, you'll need to get the approved or Adept version, which you can get from Varja, who's a merchant that you'll find at the Long Notch settlement in the Frozen Wilds. Once you speak to Varja, you'll become besties, and you'll need to go on a hunt with her to collect some unique machine parts. She has 3 of these different errand quests total, which I'd definitely recommend completing all of them because you end up with some of the best unique weapons in the game.
Hunt it with me? I'll turn that weapon into your new best friend. second best.
And one of the other unique weapons that you can get from Varja that I love to use is the improved Stormslinger. The Stormslinger is a high damage shock weapon that fires charged bolts in rapid succession. It is the epitome of a high risk, high reward weapon because the more you charge up a shot to hit a machine, the more powerful that shot is, but also the more damage you're likely to take from the recoil. Once you start to shoot the Stormslinger, it'll charge up and you'll see a gauge appear on the screen. The more you fire it, the more damage it'll do, but it'll also start to deal damage to Aloy. And depending on your difficulty level and your armor, the damage could be enough to outright kill you. Now to avoid that, you'll just have to be careful not to get too greedy and go for max damage because it's really not necessary because the weapon is pretty powerful enough on its own. Or you can equip an outfit like the Shadow Stalwart, which is my personal favorite armor in the game, that boosts your shock resistance that helps negate some of that elemental damage. The Stormslinger is also more resource efficient than the Icerail. While it does still cost a lot of sparkers to craft new ammo, you can hold a lot more shock ammo at any given time before having to reload, and sparkers in general aren't necessarily as hard to farm as chill water. Now for coils, I use all handling coils because that helps increase the speed of the weapon, but if you have handling coils that also have a secondary benefit of damage, those are preferable since you can't equip damage coils directly to the Stormslinger. That way, you're still getting a little bit of a damage buff and helping to maximize the weapon to its fullest. Now to pick this one up, similar to the Icerail, you need to speak to Varja to get the improved or Adept version. But before you do that, you need to get the base version, which you'll get as a reward for completing the Shaman's Path side quest. Once you complete the Shaman's Path, head back to Varja, go on another bestie hunt, and she'll upgrade the Stormslinger to the improved version or the Adept version if you're on New Game Plus.
What you did to that Stormslinger? That was some impressive work, Varja.
Hey, it's nothing. I just helped her become what she was always meant to be.
Okay, next is the Tripcaster. Now this might not be the most unique weapon on this list, but it is one of the most powerful ones, and I think it's pretty underrated, especially in the early part of the game. The explosive tripwires in particular make this one of the highest damage weapons you can pick up. Not only can you throw down a ton of tripwires while in stealth to set up the perfect trap,
Deal with them quickly.
but they're also easy enough to use mid-combat by just throwing down a tripwire to anchor it to the ground, and then quickly throwing down the other side in front of a machine to trigger the trap. Aloy also doesn't have to worry about triggering her own traps, which is nice and just gives you one less thing to have to worry about when you're running around in combat. And explosive tripwires aren't too resource heavy to craft. They only require shards, wire, and blaze canisters. If you need a place to farm blaze canisters, I made a video where I detail some of my very best early game tips and tricks, which includes a shard farm where you can pick up a ton of blaze with pretty much no effort at all. And I also talk about where to pick up the Shadow Tripcaster, my personal favorite Tripcaster, as early as possible. I'll be sure to link that video in the description below if you want to check it out. Now for coils on the Tripcaster, I go all in on damage coils so that I can make the absolute most out of every explosion. Just load it up with as many of the highest damage coils you have, and then sit back and watch the machine parts fly. Now last on this list is the Tearblaster. This might not be the most powerful weapon on this list, but it is one of the most fun and one of the most useful, especially on harder difficulties like Ultra Hard. The Tearblaster is a short-range weapon that sounds out a blast of compressed air that will strip a machine of their armor, weapons, and other parts and leave them mostly helpless and more susceptible to damage. This Tearblast effect has to be one of the most satisfying parts of the entire game. Going up against a machine and then blasting off their armor and weapons and then just finishing them off with either your bow, a blast sling, or even using their own weapon against them is one of my favorite ways to take out machines. Now there's only one Tearblaster in the game, and it's one you get as a reward for completing the Hunter's Blind side quest. This is a side quest that you'll gain access to after finishing the Hunting for the Lodge side quest, which is the one that basically kicks off the hunting ground challenges. So for most players, especially if you're in New Game Plus, this is probably one that you've already completed or will already have access to pretty easily.
Well, you know, it gets lonely in the wilds after a few weeks. Terribly lonely, in fact.
Okay, and that is my list of the most unique weapons in Horizon Zero Dawn that you definitely need to check out. But what are some of your favorite, most underrated weapons in the game? Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.